In this episode, we shift back into reinforcement mode because the topics you have just covered form the backbone of how organizations actually run security programs. Cyber risk, governance, compliance, and ethics are not isolated themes. They interact constantly. If you cannot recall them quickly and connect them smoothly, exam scenarios can feel complicated even when they are built on simple principles. This memory sprint is about tightening those connections and increasing your confidence in rapid, accurate recall. The goal is not speed for its own sake, but clarity under light pressure. When you can summarize, compare, and apply these ideas without notes, you know they are becoming part of your long-term understanding rather than temporary memorization. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. Start by recalling the definition of risk without looking at any reference. Risk is the combination of likelihood and impact. Now expand that definition out loud. Likelihood reflects the probability that a threat will exploit a vulnerability. Impact reflects the magnitude of harm to assets and the business if that exploitation occurs. Pause and ask yourself what increases likelihood. Exposure, weak controls, motivated attackers, and known vulnerabilities all increase probability. Now ask what increases impact. Sensitive data, regulatory obligations, operational dependence, and reputational stakes all raise consequences. This quick two-part recall reinforces that risk is not about fear. It is about structured evaluation. Now recall the 4 risk treatment strategies and define each in a single clear sentence. Avoidance eliminates the risky activity entirely. Mitigation reduces likelihood or impact through controls. Transfer shifts financial consequences to another party, often through insurance or contracts. Acceptance acknowledges the risk and chooses not to take additional action because it falls within tolerance. After stating these, create a fast example for each without hesitation. If you struggle, mark that topic mentally for another review. This is how spaced retrieval strengthens weak areas. The act of forcing recall, even imperfect recall, is what deepens memory. Next, pivot to governance. Governance is the system by which leadership directs and oversees security efforts to ensure risks are managed appropriately. Without rereading prior material, explain how policies fit into governance. Policies express leadership intent and define expectations. Standards translate policy into mandatory requirements. Procedures provide step-by-step instructions to implement those requirements. Now test yourself by classifying a statement. If a document says all sensitive systems must use strong authentication, that is policy direction. If it specifies a minimum authentication method, that is a standard. If it describes how to configure and review authentication, that is a procedure. Rapid classification is a common exam skill. Move on to compliance and ask yourself how it differs from risk management. Compliance focuses on meeting defined legal, regulatory, or contractual requirements. Risk management is broader and addresses all risks to assets, whether or not they are mandated by law. Now connect compliance to impact. Why does regulated data increase impact? Because violations can trigger fines, lawsuits, public disclosure, and reputational damage. This increases the business consequences of failure. That single insight often explains why certain controls are prioritized in exam scenarios involving personal or financial data. When you see regulated information, assume higher impact and heightened obligations. Now test your recall of the asset threat vulnerability control chain and integrate it with compliance. Imagine a scenario involving customer personal information stored in an online database. Identify the asset. The customer data. Identify a threat. Unauthorized access by an attacker. Identify a vulnerability. Weak authentication or unpatched software. Identify controls. Strong authentication, patch management, and monitoring. Now add compliance thinking. Because the data is regulated, impact includes potential fines and required notifications. This integration of risk and compliance demonstrates deeper understanding. Practice compressing this reasoning into a short explanation so it feels automatic. Turn next to ethics and professional judgment. Without looking back, define ethical behavior in cybersecurity in 1 or 2 sentences. It involves acting with integrity, respecting privacy, using authorized access only for legitimate purposes, and communicating risk honestly. Now recall at least 2 situations where professional judgment matters. Incident response under pressure and decisions about granting access are strong examples. In each case, ethical conduct means following authorized processes, documenting actions, and avoiding shortcuts that undermine trust. When you practice stating this clearly, you reinforce the idea that ethics is not abstract. It guides specific decisions. Another valuable recall technique is comparison, contrast mitigation, and transfer. Mitigation reduces technical or operational risk directly. Transfer shifts financial consequences, but does not remove the technical exposure. Contrast policy and standard. Policy sets direction and intent. Standard defines mandatory requirements. Contrast compliance and security. Compliance ensures minimum requirements are met. Security aims to manage overall risk effectively. These contrasts sharpen mental boundaries and reduce confusion during multiple-choice elimination. The exam often presents 2 similar options, and your ability to distinguish them quickly is a major advantage. Now challenge yourself with a mini-scenario sprint. Imagine leadership pressures the security team to delay reporting a suspected breach to avoid negative publicity. What principle applies? Ethical judgment and transparency. What should happen? Escalate appropriately, follow incident response procedures, and communicate honestly. Next scenario. A vendor handles sensitive customer data on behalf of the organization. What risk concept applies? Third-party risk and compliance obligations. What should be prioritized? Clear contractual requirements, oversight, and monitoring. These short scenario drills build flexible recall rather than fixed memorization. It is also useful to rehearse prioritization logic. If you face 2 risks, one with high likelihood and moderate impact, and another with low likelihood but catastrophic impact, how do you reason? You compare combined risk and business tolerance. Sometimes catastrophic but rare events still deserve attention if impact is severe and unacceptable. Other times, frequent moderate events may justify immediate mitigation. The key is that you evaluate both dimensions rather than reacting emotionally. Practice articulating this reasoning smoothly because exam questions often hinge on relative comparison rather than absolute definitions. Spaced retrieval works best when you vary the order of topics. Instead of reviewing in the sequence you learned them, jump between risk, governance, compliance, and ethics unpredictably. This trains flexible access to knowledge. For example, start with ethics, move to risk treatment, then jump to policy versus standard, then back to compliance impact. If you can maintain clarity across this shifting order, your knowledge is well integrated. If you find confusion when switching topics, schedule shorter reviews more frequently for those areas. Over time, switching will feel natural. As you approach exam readiness, your recall sessions should become shorter and more focused. Aim to summarize each major topic in under a minute while maintaining accuracy. If you cannot explain a concept clearly in that time, revisit it. Quick summaries build confidence and reduce cognitive load. When your brain recognizes a scenario pattern during the exam, it will retrieve the correct framework faster. That speed does not come from cramming. It comes from repeated, spaced, active recall. This memory sprint is about sharpening that edge. To conclude, this spaced retrieval session reinforces that cyber risk is defined by likelihood and impact, that governance structures security through policies, standards, and procedures, that compliance raises impact through legal and contractual obligations, and that ethics guides professional judgment when rules alone are not enough. Rapid recall strengthens your ability to apply these principles under time pressure and to eliminate incorrect options confidently. When knowledge is integrated and flexible, scenarios feel structured rather than chaotic. If you keep one decision rule from this sprint, let it be this. When reviewing, force yourself to explain each concept from memory, compare it to a related concept, and apply it to a quick scenario before checking your notes.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.